I'm Cheryl Ann Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for those of us who still dare to want it all, who have big dreams and bold ambitions. I think we deserve to have a big, full life and the freedom to enjoy it. So let's design our next chapter together for brilliance, not burnout. Each week, I'll bring ideas, insight, and a fresh perspective to keep you growing into a life that feels as good as it looks. Brilliant Balance, your life, your way. Now let's get started. This is episode 406 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. Redefining reasonable. It's time to stop overcompensating for unrealistic expectations. So I want you to know as we start this episode that sometimes I picture you out there. You know, maybe you're in your car, it's like 7:30 p.m. You've got takeout in the passenger seat. You're trying to remember if you've signed that permission slip, if you've emailed back that important client, if you've moved the laundry from the washer to the dryer, right? It feels like you've done every single thing right today. You've checked all the boxes. You probably skipped your lunch. You stayed late. But it still feels like you're behind. Like somehow, even with all this effort, you're dropping balls. And maybe it feels like you're the problem. But I want to ask you today, as we kick off this episode, what if the problem isn't you? What if you're actually trying to win a game that's rigged? And today I want to offer you that radical idea. That you, the one out there who's trying to do it all, what if you're actually fighting an uphill battle against unrealistic expectations? And what if it's time to redefine what's reasonable? That's what we're going to talk about today. Because maybe the expectations are just artificial. Maybe your boss has no idea how much you're actually doing. Maybe the standard that you're holding yourself to isn't even human. And maybe, just maybe, if you keep quietly compensating for this broken system, nothing will ever change. So I want to point out some hidden issues that I have started to uncover, ones that kind of lurk beneath the surface that like perpetuate this problem, and they keep us stuck in a cycle thinking it's you when it's not. And I'm going to take you through this piece by piece today because there is so much freedom on the other side of this realization. And I want you to feel that light bulb go on, right? That moment of insight come where you unlock something that has been keeping you stuck for just probably way too long. I'm going to have 3 big points to cover today with some subpoints under each of those. And I really want you to kind of like sit up a little straighter and listen in on this one, because what I'm about to share really could change a lot for you. I know it has for me, and I know it has for many, many women that I've had the opportunity to coach individually and collectively over the years. Okay. So why is it that we think it's us? What is the kind of situation that we find ourselves in that is causing us to have all of this work that we are trying to keep up with? Like that scenario that I painted at the beginning of this episode where you're just running so hard and yet you're never going to be done. Like you have some latent awareness that there's no done to this to-do list. It's just infinite. What is going on there? And why is that such a prevalent problem for women that are in roles of leadership, right? Who are climbing the ladder and kind of advancing through the rungs of leadership and responsibility. Why is it such a prevalent issue? And why is it so poignantly felt by women in particular? Well, the first thing that I want to point out is what I'm going to refer to as the invisible labor trap. The invisible labor trap is the idea that you are not just doing your job, the work that you're paid for. You are also managing logistics and emotions and planning and prep work and what if scenarios that no one else even sees. In other words, you're doing the work around the work, right? This is all of that coordination and emotional labor and cleanup and preparation that keeps everything humming, yet doesn't really get the credit. Right? Ask yourself, are you the one who is like prepping the decks for meetings, right? You're making all the slides, you're taking the meeting notes, you're organizing the offsite when it's time for one. You're the one who remembers the birthdays and sends the thank you cards and smooths over like all the little interpersonal tension that rises up so everybody likes each other. You're playing like unofficial team therapist or cheerleader. And I just wonder if your job description were actually written to include everything you actually do in a day, how long would that be? Because that is the invisible labor trap that is really at play here, right? You're doing work around the work. You're also probably doing non-promotable work. These are the tasks that really help the team be successful, but they don't put you in the light of being like a leader, right? You might be leading a DEI committee of some sort, planning the holiday party, right? Onboarding new hires, all without incremental compensation. You're kind of habitually volunteering for cross-functional work that no one else wants to touch because it's time consuming, right? You're the one taking notes instead of driving the meeting forward. So there is a classic study here. The University of Pittsburgh did a study that found women are 48% more likely than men to volunteer for those non-promotable tasks at work. And so the problem is not that you're not contributing. It's that your contributions can be invisible when it's time for performance reviews and promotions. Another piece of this invisible labor trap is that you potentially are spending a lot of time managing up, down, and sideways, like buffering people so that there's less conflict. You might be providing cushion for your boss, like cover, handling things that your boss doesn't want to handle, mentoring junior staff members on the team, making sure that your cross-functional partners all feel good. Like this is the work around anticipating needs before they get voiced. My boss in my early corporate career used to call it the meeting before the meeting, right? Like the huddle that had to happen before the meeting could happen so that you were cushioning tough messages or cleaning up missteps that happened. There's the meeting after the meeting too. Same idea, right? Emotional support to those teammates who are struggling. You're like, this is the work that makes you like the glue, and you're holding the culture together, but no one promotes the glue, right? So that's just like there's very little credit for this kind of work. And on top of that, you may be keeping it all quiet so that no one notices. Like, oh my God, if anyone knew I was doing all of this work, I don't even want them to know. You don't want to seem difficult, right? You just want someone to notice because we got told not to toot our own horns, like famously, right? And we get praised for being reliable. So that creates this self-perpetuating cycle where we just do more and more and more to protect that reputation. So that collection of activities, there's a real cost to covering this invisible labor, right? This is the one-way ticket to burnout. This leads to resentment. This leads to disengagement, or what some people started to call quiet quitting, right? But it also causes us to miss promotions, right? And raises because we're being viewed as supportive and not strategic, or being seen as the helper and not the leader, the mentor, right? We kind of mother people. Those characteristics of how we show up at work. If you're listening to me say this and you're going, ouch, like how does she know? It's because this is what we have been conditioned to do. And when your day is full of invisible tasks, there's too little time for the visible impact. Right? There just isn't enough of you to go around. And so this is a really important cautionary tale that if you are feeling like, I just cannot get everything done, what is wrong with me, right? Why can't I do it? I want you to step back and assess how much invisible labor are you taking on? And is that why you feel like there's something wrong with you? And I'm just warming up, y'all, because that is only like the first of the reasons that you might end up feeling like there's something wrong with you when in fact there is something wrong with the system. There are unreasonable expectations being set. Because the second thing is your boss doesn't even know because you haven't told them, right? We have this belief, I think this comes up regularly in coaching, that someone who I am in dialogue with will be telling me how much she is working, how hard she is working, how much she is doing. And the work keeps coming, right? It keeps getting piled on. New projects keep getting handed to them. New direct reports keep getting handed to them. And they're like, I cannot do anymore. And what is wrong with me? I just cannot get all of this done. And I think that when your boss doesn't know because you haven't told them, right? Especially in hybrid or remote roles like so many of us are in, overachievers are really starting to suffer in silence, right? You say yes, you deliver, you make it look easy. And so more keeps coming. It's like hard work is rewarded with more hard work. And that's because so many of us feel like we have to overperform just to be seen as competent. There is a Deloitte Women at Work survey that showed more than half of women agree with that statement, that they need to overperform to be seen as competent. So you may think you're being a team player, but you actually could be teaching people to underestimate the load that you're carrying, right? Like we're rigging the game against ourselves when we do this. Because why? Well, we make it look too easy. High-performing women are so good at handling chaos that we like unintentionally hide it. We like being called superwoman and being told like how amazing we are. We solve problems before they escalate and we don't show the stress so people think we're fine. And we do the work at off hours, like early in the morning or late at night, because God forbid anyone know how hard we're working, because we want people to think we can get all this done during the day. And it's like, if no one sees the struggle, they assume there isn't one, right? And then we're just bearing that burden in private. I think another reason that this happens, we don't share with our leadership what's going on, is we're managing perception instead of managing reality. If you're worried about being seen as incapable or being seen as disorganized or being seen as not tough enough or not efficient enough, right? And so you're saying yes, even when you want to scream no, and then you like underreport your workload and you don't complain about it because you think everyone else must be managing this, you might be overperforming just to stay in the game, right? But if no one knows you're doing it, it's like it doesn't even count, which is so heartbreaking because we're exhausted and on this one-way path to burnout and nobody even knows. Did you know that beyond hosting this podcast, I also directly support women leaders at the intersection of work and life? As a member of BOLD, you get direct access to me, the women on my team, and a peer group of exceptional women who are rewriting the rules and redefining what it means to have it all together. Go to brilliant-balance.com/bold to learn more and apply for your spot today. Leaders don't know what they don't know, right? I promise you, your boss is focused on outcomes, not effort. So they are seeing the deliverables come in day after day, week after week. They are not seeing the process that you have to go through to deliver those. So they might assume that the system is working just fine because you're the one making it work, right? You are the duct tape and glue holding this thing together. And so there is no reason for them to make changes. If you keep quietly compensating or overcompensating for a broken process or a broken system, your silence is complicit, right? It becomes a vote to keep that system in place. I'm going to be really careful about that. And I think feedback loops are so broken in companies today. There's no mechanism to regularly talk about workload in a way that's safe, right? And if we don't have psychological safety, we will not talk about these things. So if we're so worried that we're going to get fired or have our performance rating affected, and if all of our one-on-ones are about project updates, not about how we're doing or what our capacity is like, then we build unsustainable systems. And I want you to ask yourself, as you're listening to my voice, are you sitting in an unsustainable system that you are overcompensating for? Right? Have you become the thing that is holding together an unsustainable system? Because what gets rewarded gets repeated. Same thing we tell our kids, right? You get what you reward. What gets rewarded gets repeated. And if we continue to do this and we feel rewarded for it, even if it's not sustainable, we will keep doing it. And I think it's important reframe here that when you share with your leadership the reality of your situation, you are not complaining, you are clarifying. It is actually a power move to sit down and say, let me show you what's going on here. Here's what I am being asked to do. Here is some data on what it is taking for me to do this. Here are the trade-offs I am already making. Here's my recommendation on how we handle this going forward. Like, where else is that going to come from if it doesn't come from us? And if your boss doesn't know the cost, they can't help make it better. So I realize it takes great courage to be able to explain what is actually happening out there in the real world. But I promise you, it will not change until we have the courage to share the reality of the situation we're living in. right? When we keep overcompensating and we keep thinking there is something wrong with us, and therefore we can't speak up, we don't give an opportunity for the system to change. Because the third point I want to make is the game is rigged, right? Let's call it what it is. Some systems are built in ways that make it nearly impossible for us to thrive without burnout. You're not imagining this. This is not like a you problem that you're the only person in your company or in your industry who is struggling to keep up. Everyone is struggling to keep up, right? The second shift still exists. Women still do significantly more unpaid work at home, even when we're working full time. And if you've internalized the failure to keep up as a personal flaw, it's time to stop. Okay. Let's remember a few things about this. Workplace norms were not designed with you in mind. Many systems still reflect outdated expectations, like 9-to-5 models that ignore caregiving responsibilities. Advancement paths in companies that reward visibility over the value that we're bringing. Office politics that favor people who are great at self-promotion over people who are steady performers. And women are just less likely to be evaluated on measurable outcomes. And we have to fight to change that. It's going to take all of us using our courage to be able to change that norm. Second thing is, you probably are being held to a higher standard, right? Research shows that women are often scrutinized more closely and expected to prove themselves repeatedly. It's the whole Barbie monologue. You're expected to be competent and warm. You have to deliver results and maintain team morale, right? There's less room for error. There's less credit for success. And you might be exhausted not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're doing it twice as well for half the credit. So again, if we can kind of take off the rose-colored glasses and say, if I look at this environment with honest, kind of fresh eyes, and I stop putting myself at the center of the problem, what do I notice? Right? Because success has been redefined, but our systems haven't caught up. They just haven't. We want women today, all of us want this, to be career-driven, right? Really wildly successful in our careers. We want to be deeply involved parents and family members. We want to be stylish and fit and spiritual and socially engaged and calm, but the structures just haven't adjusted to support this. And so we can't chase a version of success that's never been sustainable. We have to redefine it on our own terms. Because if we don't name the game, right, we're going to keep playing it. And when you recognize the inequity in the system, when you recognize where the system is broken, something really cool opens up, which is that you get to define success on your own terms. You get to refuse to internalize structural problems as your own. And you get to make new rules and model those for others, bringing them along with you. Right? Once you see that the game is rigged, you don't have to play harder. You get to play by your own rules. And that, I promise you, you have more agency than you think. You have more of an opportunity to make changes inside the system, right? Once you can see the system clearly and you decide what you are no longer willing to tolerate. And I know this because I see it every single day in the women inside of our bold community and inside of Brilliant Balance overall. So when I am in two-way dialogue with you, and you're not just hearing my words, right, through the podcast, I am able to learn from your experience and really see where is this patterning playing out and what can we do to change it. And I will tell you, the change that I see is so exciting. When women get this, when this unlocks and they go, oh my God, what if it is not me? You know what this feels the most like to me? It feels like when I learned about dressing rooms. Bear with me here. This analogy works. Early on in my life, I would try on a pair of jeans or an outfit, and if it did not look good, it was a me problem, right? It was all about how I was broken and I was the wrong size and I was the wrong shape. And at some point, someone unlocked for me, like, actually, that's not a you problem. That's a clothing design problem. That article of clothing was not designed for you. It does not fit. It was not made for you. There is dissonance between that garment and you. right? But it doesn't have to be a you problem. You can go in search of the clothing that is exactly right for you. So too with the environment we're in, right? And even better than it is with clothes, we can change the environment. We can speak up for ourselves. We can start to hold boundaries in a way that starts to change the environment around us so that it is, in fact, a better fit, like having a great tailor for an outfit you really want to wear. Okay, you get to be your own tailor in this analogy. So here are some things you can do. When you stop blaming yourself, you can draw a boundary without guilt, acknowledging that you're not admitting defeat. You're just asking for what you need, right? You can have a conversation with someone who needs to know how much you're doing and maybe be brought into the process of changing that. That could be your boss. It could be a mentor. It could be a sponsor. It can be a colleague, a cross-functional peer, right? You could maybe give yourself a little grace for not being subhuman or superhuman, right? You're just a human. You have human needs, human limitations, human desires, and you're allowed to be a human even when you're being a superstar at work. You can also say what you see, right? You can be forthright about what you see happening around you. Instead of thinking it must be me, if you start with the assumption of maybe it's not, maybe this is systemic. And if you speak up, who else might benefit, right? Who else can you bring along into benefiting from your courage? Because that's when things start to shift, not just for you, but for everyone who's watching how you lead your life, how you lead your career, and how you create space for things outside of your career in your life. So this week, I want you to name one place where you've been silently blaming yourself for something that might not actually be yours to own. And I want you to either say something or do something. Say something to someone who needs to know, or do something to change the pattern. Draw a line, ask for help, drop the ball, right? Because maybe it's not you. And if you keep covering for it, nothing will ever change. But if you find a way to redefine reasonable, right? To stop overcompensating for unrealistic expectations, everything can change. And that's where you're going to feel positively brilliant. Okay. As always, if you need support doing this, if you want to talk about it, if you want to call in some thought partnership and support, it is so easy to reach me. You can DM me on Instagram at cschoolnikki. You can go to the website and use the contact form to be in touch. You can reply to any of the emails if you're on my list that we send you. And I would be happy to provide some support for you at this intersection. And if something really resonated about today's episode with you and you feel compelled to share it with other people, I'm always so grateful when you do that. I know there are thousands and thousands of women out there who would benefit from hearing this particular message today. Put it into their hands. Be generous with what crossed your path and put it into the hands of people who need to hear it. That is all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.